I'll take a motion, open the meeting.
I make the motion.
I will
have a
second
motion,
that.
Open the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor, Mr. DeRoss,
Yes.
Ms. Valley,
yes.
Mr. Hessian is a yes. Where am I? Okay. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's monthly meeting of the Rockland Board of Sewer Commissioners. Listings on those matters anticipated by the chair, which may or may not be discussed. This item is being recorded for playback later in WRPS. Excuse me. With that, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meetings. The 1 minute meeting I'd like to get approved, if you had read it, was the working session of January 12th. Dan, did you get a chance to read that?
I couldn't get a download on my computer.
All right. Then I'll table that. That is the one where we met with, I'll just reference it. Until we approve that, I won't post it.
All right. I'd like to suggest that our next working session, I think we're a bit behind on approving minutes. So I don't know, having listened to Dan, if it's better if I just print them all out and we can go through them at the working session.
My son showed me how to take it off the computer
Yeah,
and put it on the hard drive and take it that way out.
okay,
Start going through them well.
okay. So what
Okay,
would be,
I'll put that on because what I have is a tentative, I started a tentative agenda for next week that I'll send out to you guys tomorrow. I want to send Robin a copy too to make sure we're all up to speed of what's going on. The only
all right, so what do we want to do with all those minutes? Send them all out at once?
we could do them all at once and one just go through them. If you get them out, we could hopefully read them. I'm pretty well up to date on what you've sent out.
Okay. All right, I will work with Robin on that.
Okay. Veolia project manager update. I received an update from John Ayotte. Rick, how do you say it? Is it Ayotte?
That's a good guess. I think it's IOT, but I don't know. I've heard it said both ways.
Okay. So let me just run them down. The CWMP, the draft was issued, phase 2 draft was issued 4/1/4. Viola to perform a peer review. Wright Pierce is in agreement on the total phosphorus removal.
Did Wright Pierce do the peer review?
Wright Pierce did, I guess that Wright Pierce wrote it. Veolia was taking a look at it. They have released the phase 2 draft, which we're going to be reviewing tomorrow night. SSESI reduction that is closed. The rate study. Veolia will do a peer review once the study is available. Draft copy not available. INO control plan. Veolia was issued a draft copy, waiting on Weston Sampson to provide status. IPP program sent to Veolia's technical performance division, letter of findings forthcoming.
Can you slow down a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, Robin. I'm going to send this all to you anywho.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm going to send you a copy of it too. I should do that now.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
Digestive piping, boiler piping, we'll talk about that later. Like what I will do, they're in the midst of a design plan review. Their findings were shared with Hallam Engineering. Hallam looking for state approval using 304 stainless. Rick and I had a conversation. And you know, Rick, it's funny, I was looking at it in the original spec. They mentioned cast iron, not stainless. They mentioned steel, not stainless.
Right. So I think the biggest thing is, I mean, what we currently have is steel. We're trying to go steel, but it looks like the Mass State Plumbers Board there is going to probably make us do stainless, which is going to drive the cost even higher.
Yeah, so what we were doing, we were talking about that, and if we could gone with the steel, we would have saved almost 2/3 of the price. Semi-annual report was submitted and that is closed. Project management for January should be pretty minimal on that, pretty light. With that, I'll go, Robin, you want to do a quick administrative update? It's up to you.
Well, I didn't bring the stuff for the administrative update, but there is something I want to talk about once it's part of the drain layer applications. So last Sunday, there was an emergency dig safe pulled for a home. I forget what the address of the home was. But
429 Beach Street. Oh, excuse me, 614 Beach Street, right, Rick?
That's correct, Chuck. 614.
Okay, so the dig safe was pulled on a Sunday. David Taylor forwarded it to sewer and Rick had Gary go out to mark it out. Before Gary arrived, they had already opened up the ground. Before he had a chance to mark it. It was a person that was through Roto-Rooter. This happened before, a couple of years ago. With Roto-Rooter, they use people that aren't licensed in the town, and then after they do the work, they're seeking a license. So I just find that to be problematic for our residents, because I feel like somebody needs to reach out to Roto-Rooter.
I was just going to say that. Why don't, if you could get me a phone number, I will call them tomorrow. I'm concerned that we're not vetting these people. You shouldn't be opening the ground before it gets marked out. I agree 1000% with you.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, I will give them a call tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Roto-Rooter wants to license the people they use, or if they want to use, make an agreement with somebody we already have licensed.
Well,
but
that's what I was going to say. I'd give them a copy of our licensed drain layers, or let me work it out with them, see how they want to handle it.
Right, because they're using people off of a list that they have, and if they, like the person that they used the other day came from Shrewsbury.
Mm.
But that's quite a hike when we already have like 15 licensed drain layers in town that they could probably, make an arrangement with, or get their people licensed at the beginning of the year like everyone else does.
Okay.
All right, so having said that, I do have some drain layer renewals. I have Glenn.
Okay, now my turn to slow you down. Hold it. Okay, go.
All right, so I'm just going to run through them. They up front, I'll say that they all have the paperwork in order. They paid their fees. I have all the certificates of insurance, the bonds, the dates, everything required, and their renewals. They've already been licensed in town.
Do I have to check their references?
They don't supply references at this point because they're renewals and they've.
Oh, renewals, excuse me.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
All right. So I didn't want to have to repeat that for every single one. So up front,
Okay.
everyone's covered. So we have Glenn LaPointe. We have C Spirito Inc. Robert B. Auer Inc. T.A.I. Aria Brothers.
See that, yeah.
Sandstone Construction. Tascon. Sean Farrell Excavation Inc. And Iaria Brothers, the second one. This is the one that's in Hingham. There's two separate ones. Dandel Construction in Hanson. That's all that I have so far. There are a few still pending. I'm waiting for paperwork and payments and such. But if we could approve those, I would appreciate it.
I make a motion, we approve the drain layers as listed by Robin for renewal.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Take a vote. Mr. DeRoss.
Yes.
Ms. Valley.
Yes,
And Mr. Hessian is a yes. That is unanimous. Drain layers approved.
Thank you.
Abatements.
I do not have any abatements tonight.
Drain layers done. New connection requests.
We don't have any on the agenda for tonight.
Dave Taylor is off. Continuation of old business. How do I want to start this? Yesterday, we had a presentation to, let me see, the planning board. I had invited, I'll tell you who I invited, was planning, Concom, open space, the school, Board of Health, Doug Lapp, and the 2 golf courses. Mr. Lapp appeared, the 2 golf courses appeared. John appeared from planning. Excuse me, Tom Henderson also appeared from the base. And that was it. Reason I wanted to speak to them is that, as you've got people seeing, but not the people outside, in the phase 2 draft, the phase 2 part of the report looks at flows in the high need areas in town to understand the potential sizing impacts for the treatment plant facility and the required plant upgrades to support those needs over 20 years. Well, the initial screening of that identified 6 parcels, being Union Point, the Rockland Golf Course, Harmon Golf Course, and Fitness Club, the wastewater treatment plant and the areas between that and the Eston School, Southern Conservation Land being the Beach Street Conservation Area and McCarthy Farm. Naturally, there was just a general conversation, and one thing I want to emphasize, those were hypothetical areas for further evaluation. The conversation morphed into some other park areas, specifically Hartsfield Park, and some of the areas in Hartsfield and possibly Jefferson. Highly unlikely that those will occur, but those will be clarified in depth tomorrow night with a presentation by Wright Pierce. Let me see.
Was that right, Pierce, who presented yesterday as well?
Yes, yesterday was Wright Pierce. And they'll be doing an in-depth presentation of the phase 2 tomorrow night. But also on that, which is why I kind of wanted to go to the minutes of the 12th. Friday, I think it was Friday. I lose track. I think it was Friday. Rick, you were there, I believe. We had a meeting on. Well, let me jumping the gun here. Excuse me. Upcoming presentations. Tomorrow night will be the phase 2. The rate study by Weston Sampson, we're due to see the draft either at the end of this week or next week. We can tweak it as we want. Yoli is going to review it. Wright Pierce is going to review it because of what it may or may not impact on the CWMP. Once that is finalized, that will be posted. And I'm asking them to give us a dedicated night to answer the questions on that rate study for the residents. I think that may be a separate meeting. I'm tentatively scheduling that. I put down the 16th, but it was just the date it'll be around there. So we know when that's coming in.
Is that at one of our evening meetings?
That'll be an evening meeting so everyone can attend. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions on that. That's when they're going to give the recommended rates for next year, for this year, and spread out over. They're going to ask them, make sure you put it in charts so people could see we're spreading this over 20 years. The next thing will be the I&I remediation work. That has been approved. The notices went out to Green Mountain Piping, I believe it is. And once they get all the contracts signed, the I's dotted, we're going to schedule them to come in and have an open session meeting, probably in an afternoon where they're coming so far, and to give us a preliminary schedule of where that's going. To tie into that.
Can I interrupt for a second? Because I'm just struggling to understand. Green Mountain Piping, they're gonna do an overview, but do they have the contract to do the I&I removal? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? Okay,
Yes. They have the contract to do it, and what I'm asking them to do is to come in, give us an overall presentation on their approach, and if they can, a timeline.
So a kickoff.
So we could
meeting.
work out some kind of a schedule. Because the sooner, and I'm gonna try to rush them on this, because the sooner we get that done, the sooner we can throw open some applications here. Now, in conjunction with that, Mr. Lapp posted for advertising the year one monitoring contract. Excuse me, now that is going out to bid. White Weston Sampson prepared the bid, and that's going to be request for qualification. So when that comes in, we review the qualifications, and then we can select the vendor to do that year one monitoring. That is going to be paid for with the ARPA funds. So Sherry, you're going to want to ride herd on that and all the billing on that coming in on that.
Yep.
You and Robin can work out together how you want to handle that.
so is Weston and Sampson also bidding on that work?
They're probably going to be one of the ones to bid on it. I ran all this by legal and Doug, and I have a ton of emails that reviewed it. So if you need copies of those emails for a file, I can give them to you.
I do need them.
Okay, let me make a note of that. What I'll probably do is print them out and hand them to you so I know which ones are which.
Yeah, that'll be better. Thank you. Because I'll have to set up files for them.
Yeah, Robin, you and I will get together to work on those files.
I&I year one. Robin. To the file.
So Doug Lapp is posting the bids,
Yes.
Okay.
He's gonna put it on Combis and something else.
Does it have a deadline?
I believe, I want to double check it. I believe I put February 13th that the bids are due, and we'll look at them February 16th. I'm pretty sure that's the date.
Okay.
Okay, the tertiary phosphorus and proposal for town meeting. I want to put something up on the screen here. This is why I really wanted to approach that those minutes. Rick, you on? Rick, chime in.
Yep, I am. I'm on.
Last week, Matt Johnson, Fioli's Capital Managed Group, Rick, Steve Hallowell, who's the vice president of the Waste Engineering Group of Wright Pierce, and Chris Pierce, vice president of engineering from Wright Pierce, Kevin Olson of Wright Pierce, and myself met to just come up with how we want to proceed this project going forth, and it ties into the meeting we had on the 12th. I believe I told you at that point that we were going to be meeting. This is not from the next sentence. This is for a vote. The way we approach this is to have a core team to get this formulated first, and the people I mentioned in black there here would be on that core team. I wanted to take myself out of the leadership of that, and Matt Johnson's volunteered to take the team lead. He's done a number of these. And Kevin Olson, who did the groundwork for the facility study, is going to be the co-chair. As this morphs out, we're going to establish a specific side teams with different teams to work on different aspects of this. So what I was hoping is that Dan, Sherry, you looked at the minutes that I sent out for this meeting, what you see here, and that I can get your approval to proceed with that as a core group. So I'd need one of you to make a motion and ask for a vote. If you agree, if you want to talk about it.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, can I have, I'm gonna recuse myself. Could I have a vote, please? Mr. DeRoss,
Yes.
Ms. Valley?
Yes,
Okay. Dan, I guess, died after his vote.
Can somebody tell me what the motion is so I can write it out?
The motion is to approve that preliminary core group to start investigating the facility upgrade and basically the tertiary phosphorus system. Now, what we think is these meetings, as the projects progress, due to distances, we're gonna probably use them as a open working session of the public forum. However, the public really will not be able to comment at these. Will be really in-depth working sessions. The first meeting was what we call was last Sunday, and that's the direction we collectively feel would be the best approach. And it really came out of that. I brought what Doug had to offer about funding. And because we could, if we had went for the whole facility design, that design package alone, Rick, you jump in, would have ran over close to $4 million. And we all know that we do not have that kind of money. And at this point in time, neither does the town. But we were under that EPA order, and that order states we have to get this thing up and running by, Rick, is it April of 2025?
That's correct.
Okay, so after talking with Veolia and Wright Pierce, they collectively feel we should go after a 30% design. And that 30% design will focus on the tertiary system and the associated, I'll call the infrastructure with that. We're going to follow the engineering best practices, which means that you keep a log of all the steps you take surrounding the projects. It's to be documented as you go through it. And that's engineering notes, your financial look, investigation, documentation, legal reviews, look at all regulatory compliance, state code standards, and you got to keep an accurate log of meeting minutes. The downside to this is that anything like anything else nowadays, as you hold off, things get more expensive. So instead of a total of 4, instead of an additional 1.5 to 2 million, it may be another 2 to 3 million to get the rest of the facility design. But both Veolia and Wright Pierce feel this effort can be accomplished at a $2 to $2.5 million, and that is a guaranteed maximum price. Now we'll have a more finite meeting, but at our next meeting, and that guarantee will be in writing. Now, once this is complete, the focus will break the upgrade into manageable pieces spread out over a course of 7 to 10 years. Now, the first piece, the tertiary phosphorus system, again, as I said, this is imperative to get up and running, or at the very least into the construction phase to remain in compliance. Drop dead now is April 30th, 2025, and that's with the extension. At a previous sewer commissioners meeting on the 12th, it was suggested that we ask the Board of Selectmen to approve using the balance of the ARPA funds for $1 million. And the sewer department can finance the balance with another raise in sewer rates to avoid raising property taxes. And I think this must be approved at town meeting. Sherry, you were at the meeting, you took the notes on the minutes.
yes.
Do you have any more to add to that?
So the sewer commission does need to go before the Board of Selectmen to formally request the ARPA funds for this project. And then we will also need a vote at town meeting to commingle the fee increase with those ARPA funds.
This is in line of going for a 2.5 override.
Right.
Correct.
Right. You're looking for, and we also need a town vote to authorize the debt service. And Doug's going to help us write that.
So I sent an email to Doug asking when was the next, when he thought, talked to Mike to find out when's the next time we get on the Board of Agenda, Selectmen's Board of Agenda. I would like to have had one more, I think I'd like to have one more meeting with the, that core group to see, to make sure that's, everything's etched in stone. If you would, I would appreciate Dan and Sherry accompanying me to that Board of Selectmen's meeting.
No problem.
I want to also make note to everyone on tape here, and I think we're the only ones, that there was a technical glitch at the meeting on the 12th, and the USB card wasn't installed correctly. So there's no video. However, Sherry does keep detailed missions. Sherry, what we were hoping is that when it gets down to the financial, with all the work you've done on the budget and who you've been speaking with through town and the different vendors, that when it comes down to the grant and financial, you'll take the lead on that and formulate your own group who you want to work with. You know,
Sure.
to get this grant going, like in any other grants or any real large engineering projects, you need to establish a project narrative, which is a good solid foundation or a background on what you intend to do and how you intend to do it. Matt and Kevin are preparing that draft. We should have it for review on February 3rd. And once that is approved, it's going to be circulated to all interested parties and posted on the website. Now, once we have that project narrative, we can start looking deeper into the SRF loans, mass grants, especially on on phosphorus, focusing on the nutrient side, because as long as we have no violations, we can get a 0% loan on the SRF fundings for the nutrient side. Now, Wright, Pierce, and Veolia has strategic fund managers. Jess Richards, Miss Jess Richards of Wright Pierce is their strategic fund manager, and she's been researching this for the past couple of weeks, along with Veolia. And Jess is going to be able to report more in depth on this subject by the February 3rd. Sherry, I'm probably going to ask you to sit in on that meeting. That is going to have to be considered an open public meeting based on that. Once I have their paperwork for review, which I'm hoping, Rick, I think she said by the end of this week for the financial.
Yeah, I think that's what she said.
Okay, if we get that, the second I get it, Sherry, excuse me, I'll forward it. You can formulate any questions and you can look into that. The next scheduled meeting for us is going to be on February 3rd. And I want to go back up a bit. What I'd like to see is when we form these subgroups, as you want to call them, you know, they can, once we form them, they can have their own team leaders and they can pick their own members. But what I would like to see is someone from the sewer staff in Veolia taking part of this. If Veolia would be a part, like Rick, when I'm saying that, I'm saying maybe yourself on different sessions. It's more up your bailiwick, or Megan, or I'm drawing a line. I'm drawing a blank here. Gary or
Right.
Chucky.
Yep.
You know, put them on it. Now, Gary probably could vote where he's a resident. You yourself and Chucky could not. But as far as that core group, you would have a vote there. What I want to make this is, you know, I'd like to get some residents involved in this as well, just to see what's going in on this. That's really what I had to say. Anything more on that, or Rick?
No, I think like they were saying, Chuck, I think the next phase is we gotta basically figure out what system we're gonna go with. And I know the engineering are gonna do some borings and stuff like that, because where the soil is gonna really determine which piece of equipment we end up going with over there. I know one of them's rather heavy, so that could definitely play a factor in it. So that's pretty much where we're at right now.
The other thing is that we've also decided to go ahead with some phosphorus bench testing to get the ball rolling on that. Those tests are going to be really very inexpensive, maybe $1,000.
Yep.
But we'll get some headway on that. But like Rick made a good point there, that it's not just putting it on paper before this starts. We have to do a lot of prep work. Soil borings, right now, remember, this is going on in the facility. We got to make sure, number one, it's not hitting any underground piping or wiring. We got to make sure the soil will support it, and if any potential drainage, it can, what's going to happen there. So this is not like putting a building up. Everything has got to communicate with everything else, being where it is a full-blown, very highly technical system.
And we're very limited where we can put it. We basically have one spot.
And let's hope it can be supported.
Yep.
Anything else, Rick, on that?
No,
Dan, Sherry, Robin?
No, thank
No.
you.
Okay, those minutes, I'd like to release to put on the website that I have up here now. So if anyone wants them, they're public record, and they'll be up there for a while. EPA update. This is a interesting one. Was Rick part of that conversation? I know, no, it was Adam Higgins from Wright PS, myself, contacted Dave Turin of the EPA. We had spoke with him, but right after Christmas, to get the feel to the EPA, how they'd feel about an extension. Now, what came about was when the EPA or state took over the NIPD's permit, it automatically tacked on a year to the different dates. So instead of year one, doing that year one report for the phosphorus that we submitted, we had another year to do it. So we're a year ahead of the grant. But what they did not do was tie it into our EPA order. So the dates that were in the EPA order remain the same. Again, Rick, jump in if I say anything wrong.
no, that's correct.
So what we had to do is we knew from the get-go, from even when we received the draft and the NIPD's permit, that those dates are just not realistic financially or technically. So Rick was part of the initial conversation with Dave Turin, and I thought it went very, very well. He was receptive. He heard everything that we needed to say here. We pointed out to him the difference in the dates. He understood that. He did not give any commitments, but body language and the verbiage he was giving us, we all came away comfortable that the EPA, willing to work with us, I'm going to use the word may, or be open to extending our deadlines by 2, maybe underlined 2.5 years. Now, with that said, that would give us to April 30th of 2025 to get this tertiary phosphorus system at least into the construction phase, which means we have to have all the funding, blah, 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 prints yet, all in line by this year to meet that date. We try to give a wiggle room on them, and we had a follow-up conversation between Adam Higgins, Kevin Olson, and myself to see if we could push that date 3 or 4 years. And it was quite evident from the body language that was going to be a no way. That was, he just sat back, let us go our spiel. And at the end of it, he says, well, let me ask you this. Are you meeting your phosphorus requirements with chemicals? Yes. So technically you're not in violation. Yes, this don't have to kick in till, what, next year, Rick?
What's that? I'm sorry.
The phosphorus limit of point one is
Well,
not.
actually, so technically 0.2 would be, the 0.1 actually would be April 2025. So we would have to do our best with chemicals unless, like I said, unless he gave the town a mulligan.
4-year extension.
Yeah, a mulligan for a while, but I
Like I
think from what I've understood, he wants us to try and get to the 0.1 regardless.
He don't care how we do it. We can get at get at that point one. We're not in non-compliance, we could go with that.
Correct.
But each one of us feel, Rick, myself, right, Pierce, from day one, even in the facility study, chemicals is not the way to go. It's not the way to go for sludge, and it is the most inefficient, cost-effective way to go about this. Rick's chemical prices are out of sight. His sludge disposal is even more of a constraint. So we do need a tertiary system. And that was the basis for trying to rush this through in that January 12th meeting. And for the core group to meet real quickly on that. We know there's no way in God's green earth the town is going to give us the money for what we project right now, and Rick was at that meeting, at today's prices and the vendor constraints, at today's dollar, it's going to cost us $75 to $80 million. Back in 19 and 20, it was a $50 million project. We all know how things are climbing. So we're using 80 million as a planning scenario. By the time we get through this phosphorus, and that it's going to be more, but that's what we're working to now. So there is the basis for expediting a meeting with the Board of Selectmen to get that ARPA funding and approval by the town to go for that rate increase to fund the balance with the rates. That could get shot down. If the fire department, they want a fire department, and we may have to throw chemicals. I don't know, but they're gonna prepare an article for town meeting based on what Jeff Richards has to say financially and all that. And hopefully by a working session next week, I'll have the answers for you. Rick, did I cover that pretty much?
Yep.
I mean, the bottom line is, okay, sorry. The bottom line is the EPA is going to work with us. What they really want to see a demonstration from us. And I mean, I think I would rather tank the request for additional extensions for construction delays, which we know are going to happen, being for vendor supply items, things of that. We're going to need those mulligans then. So, yes, Sherry.
So talking about financing this with the increase in rates, is that being factored into the rate study that's going to be presented?
Yes.
Okay.
What we did after that meeting, actually, it's going to help us in the rate study by breaking it out this way, because the cost is less upfront. Before we were looking at, okay, we're looking at a $70 to $80 million plant upgrade when we were looking at the whole enchilada. Now, a realistic number, if we get the ball rolling and committed, is 8 to 10 million. I would say it's going to be a $10 million project when all said and done. But that factors into the rate to lessens the impact on the user, the residents up front.
Right.
And we already went with a 25 cents. So I think we're going to be in comfortable position to present this to the residents, that it may only be another 5 or 8%, hopefully, right here. But again, hopefully that rate study should be in the end of this week, next week, and we'll know better off. What the delay would be, he would, Weston Sampson was waiting on the balance sheet from Scott. And a decision that we made Friday about going with the 30%. They have that. I don't know if Scott gave them the balance sheet yet. For the record, Scott is the town accountant. Sherry, I'll turn it over, working session
Before
update.
you do that, can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, go.
So the $1 million in ARPA funds, does the rate study factor that in as well, which could reduce the amount of an increase that's needed?
Yes, that would take, that was factored in. This 10 million, the $2 million, $2 to $2.5 million is also part of that 10 million.
Okay, and my other question is, the rate study, does it indicate or give suggestions for the rate increase over a period of time? Like, is it a rate increase for this year, next year, 5 years, 10 years,
It's going right out, as far as I know, it's gonna go out 20 years, what they project.
20 years?
20 years, what they project the rates to be over a period of 20 years.
Okay. And those are subjects.
It was originally gonna be 30. I said, let's narrow that down, so.
All right, and is it subject to change, I'm sure, by?
Oh,
things that-
absolutely. I mean, things that could change, we have a rate, and this is one of the concerns I brought up at our January 12th meeting, is that, okay, we're only going for a 30% upgrade, and that's on a system that we currently don't have, a tertiary system. However, we are still dealing with antiques out back on the property. So should a catastrophic failure occur, be it say in the aerators, being in the, well, you name it, in the inflow building, all of a sudden that gets factored into the rate study all over, brand new.
So is that rate study gonna be a working document for a period of time?
That's what we're gonna go by for budgeting and all that for a period of time, yes. These
So
are
Weston and
good
Sampson-
questions to have that when we get the draft, which you'll be a part of at that meeting. You know, hopefully you speak right up. I mean, these are a lot of the questions. we're gonna
I don't
have.
seem to have that problem of not speaking up, Chuck.
I know that. No, but these are a lot of the questions people are gonna have, and this is why I'm having these, especially tomorrow night, because that CWMP is really the groundwork for that, and the in the facility study. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. I mean, we're not just pulling these numbers out of our hats. I mean, when you, for example, when you look at the CWMP, people think, okay, you're just looking at the sewer plant. Well, that's not the case indeed. I mean, they went out and they met with every department head. They got 30-year schedule on population growth. They looked at 30-year build out for commercial development, 30-year build out for residential development. They looked at what are the needs that they took the facility study and worked that in. Okay, what are the needs of the facility over that time? Naturally, the biggest impact is the facility. But these are all things that go into formulating a rate. Murphy,
Right, so,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
so if it's a working document that, we'll revisit so often, probably every year, will Weston and Sampson be involved in that, in updating that rate study, or do we let them loose after we get the rate study and we just work with it?
No, we haven't even crossed that bridge yet. What I wanted to do is get the rate study. Naturally, it's going to need a follow-up.
Yeah,
I would rather have and again, I'm venting, well, this is the forum to say our personal feelings on it. My personal feeling would be a sort of not an open-end contract at first, maybe for the first 5 years, have a yearly review or semi-annual review. I think a semi-annual review would be more appropriate. Find out where you are halfway through the year, make adjustments if you have to as you go along. I don't think that when you look at all the mitigating factors into this study, the facility, the population, things change.
Right, that's why I asked the question, because I was just concerned that we would just get this document and then,
No,
okay,
let it be flying blind. I mean,
Yep.
none of us have a crystal ball, and let's face it, none of us are experts in this matter.
okay. Well, I asked that question with the residents in mind, so they could have an understanding of that.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question, because I had the same one, but it's so technical. I don't see how it's possible, especially the situation we're in, where we're trying to make up for past ground. I think if we just say, hey, thank you very much, goodbye, we're not doing our due diligence for the town. I think this is something that needs to have continuous monitoring to make sure we are, not just we as a board, but the department is functioning with everything in mind. We can't just have a tunnel vision and look at one thing. We can't just say, okay, all we need is I&I. That's
Right.
not the case. I mean, it's a big apple. I mean, this upgrade is once we get into it, we were just bantering about. It is an enormous elephant to eat. And it's going to be a lot of things impacting this. But Robin, your question was right on the money. I don't think it'd be wise at all to cut them loose. I think especially where they did the initial work. And plus it would give us time to judge their work, their accuracy. Oh, you know what? One thing I didn't mention, Robin, is when I was going back in future presentations and all that, there's a training session scheduled. Robin, why don't you or Rick say something about that training section on Friday?
You want to speak to that, Rick?
You can do it if you want.
All right, so there's a GIS system that the town utilizes. It started with John Laughlin a few years ago, and David Taylor really picked up the ball on that and has got a lot of different departments involved. And so sewer is involved. We had all of our documents for the as-built scanned in. So when we get calls for mockouts, we can use an iPad instead of going to the paper files, making copies and going out there, and it can be on the fly with the personnel to make it a lot easier. And there's lots of layers in there, drainage is in there, amongst other things. So we're going to have training on that GIS system with the people who developed it, which is Environmental Partners. So it'll be that most of the plant personnel. I think, Chuck, you're going to participate.
Well, I was going to participate, but remember I said, see if Dave wants to have someone from Highway in it, because he'd be using
Well,
that.
well, they're well trained over at Highway, but he is going to send Megan over from Highway because she's been using it for a while, and so she could probably answer some of our questions as well. So it'll be EPG, Megan from Highway, and then all of us. They're going to bring some extra equipment for us to learn on, because we only have, one iPad for sewer and one iPad for Veolia, which is all we need. But for training purposes, they're going to bring more computers to help us out.
One thing I'd like to piggyback on that was that I talked to Gino today, and because I had a question about it's public records and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that cannot be put on and Rick, that cannot be put on other laptops or other computers.
Well, you need access to the software, would have to be
Yeah.
downloaded, and you can't do that without permission from the vendor anyway.
Right, okay.
To buy it.
One other layer to that GIS software, which is going to be good. As we progress with this I&I removal, it's going to have a separate layer over the town, as we can see areas of town that we're going through. And speaking of I&I, just again, going off the beaten path, Rick will speak to this later on the flows, and I think Dan saw them, that with this past month, we've been averaging like 4 million gallons a day. Yeah, I think it's a short thing after tonight. We're going to blow January right out of the water. But somewhere along the line, there is a massive I leak somewhere. There has to be. For this kind of water to be coming through. So this will be good. This will give us a good area to attack that with. So Sherry, with working sessions, up to you.
Well, working sessions, I don't have to tell you, we've been pretty busy. There's been a lot of good productive discussions for the generator, beefing up our office staff and part-time clerk, discussions on the superintendent opening, as well as the I&I, the ongoing repair and the monitoring. In the future, I do see more discussions about training opportunities as they come along for various staff. We have to look at the Abington Rockland agreement, the website redesign. I think with this project coming up with the phosphorus, it's going to be important to get that website cleaned up and so that we have a place to put these documents for review. You know, various internal procedures need to be tightened up, the rate study, and I talked about the minutes approval. We really need just kind of have to go through them, get them approved so we can post them. That's it.
Okay.
The accounting update,
Yeah.
questions on that working session?
I didn't say anything.
Okay, accounting update. So the budget has been submitted and someone from the finance committee will be reaching out to me to schedule a one-on-one meeting to go over everything. And then we still need to go before the finance committee.
What about the capital planning, Sherry?
I'm getting to that. With our budget, we have excess funds to fund 2 articles which fall under the capital planning. One is 100,000 for Spruce Street, and then an article for an additional 25,000 for injector stations and pump repairs. I noticed this is kind of a recurring item on our capital planning. So I think next year we should target it and see if we can put it
What
in
was
the
that one
budget.
again, Sherry?
Injector stations
Yeah.
and pump repairs.
Well, funny you mentioned injector stations. When we were doing the facility upgrade back in the study, 19 or 20, that asset management grant, the asset management grant had come up. So as part of that, we had done a pretty good asset survey. So all our assets are up on the list, the dates, the description, all that. So that's part of the asset management grant. So I brought that up to Rick, and he said, not to Rick, to Kevin Olson. He says, yeah, we had done that because I was telling him Dave was going to come on. I said, well, how can that asset management grant help us with the facility upgrade? And I was looking around. I couldn't find it till a little while ago. I found his email to me. I want to read it verbatim. This was on the DEP asset management grant information
This email is from Kevin or David?
from Kevin. This is the one I was looking for. I'll send you a copy of it. I had asked him, can we use that as part of a facility upgrade? And he says, this is a quote, as discussed, this program does not make much sense at this time, given the wastewater treatment plant evaluation was completed already and the CWMP will be complete in a few months. I'm not sure if this is good. I'm not sure this is a good fit for collection system projects, other than perhaps your wastewater pump stations. So, and then the last thing he said was, please note, it's not 100% grant, and the recipients need to come up with a 40% match. We'll provide that value in kind services. Hope this helps. In short, not sure this grant will help us with the upgrade. But again, I just wanted to see where it would help. And when he said that with the pump stations, I'd like to see if when David does his thing, if we could tie that in to maybe getting 40% of that pump station, Spruce Street, off our budget and use that money off our capital plan and use that money elsewhere. Sherry, I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, so, all right, I'd like to dive into that a little deeper in our next working session.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
what
I
I'll do
need,
is I'll
I need
ask-
some
why don't we wait till
understanding.
Why don't we wait till David makes his presentation? And
All
then,
right, well,
um,
so the caveat to that is though, if we're going with that, we need to come up with some funding for it, which needs to go into this year's budget or
Yeah.
next year's.
according to him, if we come, he said, other than that, maybe for your wastewater pumps. And he just said the grant is not 100% grant. The recipient needs to come up with a 40% match or
Right.
provide that value in-kind services.
Right.
I'm
Okay,
not sure what in-kind services mean.
do we know when we think we'll hear back from Dave?
Well,
For the, I know he's
maybe
waiting
we
for
get him into a
information.
working session real quick.
Yeah,
Get that
yeah,
done.
yeah, that would be good.
I
Okay,
think we invited him to an evening meeting, but just let me know what working session you want him to go to and I'll invite him to that instead.
yeah, if I get
Super.
some information, maybe we can get him next Tuesday afternoon.
Yes, as soon as he has the information.
Yeah, like I said, I'll get, I'll either that or I'll put him in touch with, or you can get in touch with, what's her name? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get
For
more
capital
information from
planning,
Kevin.
there are, for capital planning, if you could please add this to our working session next week, because I do have some general questions about previous capital plan items. I'm not clear if we need to work them into this or not. But what we do need is an article that will have to go to town vote to commingle our sewer funds with ARPA funds regarding the digester piping.
So is that a third article?
That's going to be another article.
Okay, so there's 3 articles then.
So we've got
Veolia is
the
gonna work on that article. for
first
us.
state injector stations, an article just to commingle the funds for the digester piping. We're going to have to use one of the other funding articles, as we expected there's going to be a shortage because of the increase in cost for this piping.
And you know what? Now my mind just went blank, but we're commingling that with the $1 million opera funding. Is that correct?
No, the piping is separate.
$500,000 digester boiler
Okay.
/ piping. It was 500,000.
Thank you.
We had kind of reserved 315,000 for the digester boiler, but the
Right.
remaining funds are not going to cover what we expect the piping. So we're going to need some more information on that to get exact amounts to put to that.
Right.
meeting.
So that when you commingle the funds, do you mean they would go into that? Those funds are in that opera account, so we would be able to add money into that opera account? Is that where you would commingle them?
So I'm not sure exactly the bookkeeping part of it, but we'll find out. Well, as it was explained to me by Doug Lapp, you have your bucket of ARPA funds. If you're going to use other funds to take care of that ARPA project, that's the commingling.
Oh,
So anytime you use additional funds, it has to go to town meeting. So we have that for the digester piping. We're going to have that for the generator, perhaps. I'm not sure about that, but we do need to talk to the Board of Selectmen about the generator. They offered ARPA funds, so we need to formally request that when we make our decision and can give them a dollar amount. And then the commissioners had talked several months ago about changing our sewer use ordinance to a bylaw. And we'll need to get some formal wording on that. And I think Doug's going to help us on that, so that it becomes more of a rules and regulations, so that changes can be made to that document and that ordinance, rules and regulations, provided the commissioners have a public meeting. And that just means that we can change it and amend it to keep up with what's happening at the time, rather than waiting for once a year. So we have some more work to do on this capital planning before it's really finalized for submission. And that's why I'd like to work on it at our next working session.
Okay, that'll be Tuesday, and Rick, we're gonna need you for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some numbers.
Rick, what we'll do is, I promise I'll get you in and out of that.
Okay.
That it?
That's it.
The only update. Before we go into that, Rick, what I want to put something up so at least it's on the record, people see what we're doing here. When Rick talks about flows, for the month, this is what he's referring to down here. December 22, right there. These are all this is one small picture of the stuff that Rick monitors and reports to the EPA and DEP. As you can see down here, this was our number for December. And
You
this is
should probably, excuse me,
sure.
Chuck, you might want to explain the titles to people because they probably don't know what those things stand for at the top.
Good point. Good point. Okay, this is the influent flow in million gallons a day. Our permit is for 2.5 million gallons a day. So you get down this line, and this is the average for the month. So this number here is what we report to the EPA. Instead of 2.5, we're telling them for December, we're going to report 3.4, which is 1 million gallons a day over our permit. That number there goes into a 12-month rolling average that we keep track of here. And as you can see, it was going down, 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 then it spiked. Well, rest assured, it's going to spike again next month. Rick, I'm sorry, but go ahead. I just wanted people to see what you're reporting, that you're
No,
not just a pretty
yeah.
face.
Yep, so just adding to that, for the month of December, like Chuck said, we did violate our flow. At the same point, we also had 4.81 inches of rain. With that being said, January is very bleak. Right now, I am averaging 4.0 million gallons per day. So we picked up 600,000 per day. And right now with the rainfall before tonight's storm, we're at 6.6 inches of rain. So it's a lot of rain. The plant really can't handle it. So currently right now, I have to I'm running 2 shifts at the plant just to maintain the excess flow that's coming into the facility. Not something I plan on doing, but it's unfortunate we have no choice.
Rick, can I ask you a question? With this, they're predicting 2 inches of rain tonight. We're not running a risk of overflow, are we? Or
We really are. We're right on the edge.
that's what I'm more afraid of.
We're right on the edge. We could be notifying, put the notification forms out as an SSO tomorrow. It's very possible. And it's nothing, the plant is taking a beating right now with all that excess flow. Like
Rick, well, don't take it personal. We know you're doing everything you can.
I know.
Just let me know if what's going on in the morning, would you?
Yep. Yeah. Well, like I said, once we see how much rain we get hit tonight, it'll probably dictate what I do over the weekend and going forward.
One thing I'd also like to add in, if people everywhere knows, we're having a very mild winter. So this ground is really saturated. I mean, really saturated. So if we should get a heavy snowfall and a quick freeze, we could be in a world of hurt come March, April. So.
Yep, absolutely. So that's really all I got to say about the flow at this particular time. Next subject is the NIPTES phosphorus. Chuck, you had touched on this. That I've submitted that report to the EPA and SDP on the 23rd, which is of this week. And like you said, we're actually a year ahead of that, but at least they'll have the report in front of them. They can start, looking at it. repair maintenance projects, again, like I said before, you know, it's an old facility. We had, I had to replace a gear motor on our belt filter press. And we knew it was going, it was making some noise. So back in November, actually more towards the beginning of November, I ordered a new gear motor. Unfortunately, last Thursday, it basically was a complete failure. I reached out to the company because the current ship date was February 13th, even though I ordered it back in November. We're having, like every other company, still having a lot of supply chain issues. So I called the company up on Friday, said, hey, I need whatever you can do. I got to get that. So they expedited it. Ended up costing us another $1,000. Had it shipped. They actually sent it to us unpainted, but we were able to, you know, the guys ended up repainting it. Actually was delivered, air freighted to the facility Saturday evening. I had one of my employees was there at the plant. We got it Monday morning. We put it in, and Tuesday morning, actually late Monday afternoon, we were back up and running. So we only lost 4 days.
Rick, can I ask you a concern I have?
Yep.
If that pump needed painting, I hope they put numbers on it for Chuck Amaral. So you know what colors go where and to stay within the lines.
Right. But, you know, again, bringing that up, the belt filter press, we only have one press, and that was installed like I believe it was 1997. You know, and we keep talking about the major you know, an upgrade, and you know, there's no backup. If I spend approximately right now about $4,500 a week, about $18,000 a month on sludge. If I had to go out liquid, because I really don't have any other way to process the sludge, that would have, the price would have more than doubled. So it's just, I just want to let the board know how important, that's just one piece of the puzzle at the wastewater plant. And we maintain the equipment as best we can. This was, you know, like I said, we kind of predicted this was going to happen. We knew it was making some noises, you know, and it's, again, supply chain kind of eliminates some of the issues that we have down there because we just can't get things that quick. But that's really the only thing going on right now as far as, again, a repair and maintenance project. The next item,
Robin, this goes back to your concern on the rate study. These are the things which are going to happen and impact that. And unfortunately, they're going to be bigger in nature.
it's you know, it's very difficult to forecast these things. You know, like you said, we do have an asset management plan, and you know, they just, you know, eventually they just wear out.
And the double thing that Rick is facing, the worst part of it. Now, it's one thing if you had a up-to-date piece of equipment, you'd be faced with vendor supply issues. Magnify that tenfold because of the age of our equipment. And imagine what he's going through. He tells me about it daily. And it's the older the equipment, it's just exponential, the difficulty of getting spare parts.
Can I ask a question? Does the rate study have any margins or contingencies built in for things unexpected things?
But Robin, I don't know until I see it. I imagine they would. There's always got to be like when you go for a building, you build in a 10 to 15% override. So hopefully that does have that in there. I know one of the things I told them to do to cover things like that is, remember, you know, that $10 fee that we have?
Yes.
I told them, hold that out of it, treat that as gravy.
In
So-
that we can do that this year, but going forward, we can't because it's built into the rate.
No, I know, but that's what I said. I just want to have some wiggle room somewhere. So I'm sure they're building other contingencies in there. Again, we won't know until we see that draft.
When are we going to see that again? I'm sorry.
I'm hoping, well, if Scott gets the balance sheet to them, I think by yesterday, No, by today, today's Wednesday. We could see the draft Friday afternoon or by Wednesday of next week. It's all predicated when Scott gets him that balance sheet. He originally wanted, what I didn't understand, Sherry, maybe you can shed some light on it. Wright Pierce, or excuse me, Western Sampson originally wanted the balance sheet for the entire town. I saw no practicality to that. All they're looking at is the sewer department. What do they care? Can you shed any light on that? Why they?
So now you're saying he's looking for the sewer department balance sheet? Because
So that's what he's saying now?
I'm asking that question.
Oh,
It
I don't
sounded
know.
like-
You saw the email from Weston Sampson.
I did, and it sounded like because we had that changeover to the enterprise fund. Now there should be a balance sheet for the sewer department, but I think previously there wasn't. So he was going to look at the townwide because it would break out our sewers as line items.
Oh, that makes sense.
Maybe that's
Yeah,
what.
so I just made a note to myself to give Scott a call tomorrow.
Yeah, if you could, because everything's really on his shoulders now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rick.
No, no problem. Next item was the generator replacement. Again, we talked about this last meeting chart. In my opinion, we should go with the stationary 500 kW unit. Basically, it'll keep the cost down low. I strongly believe we'd have enough monies with the ARPA funding to cover the whole complete project. So at this point right now, I think we just got to look into getting that thing out to bid. I know I need a couple of they want a site plan on where it's going to go.
Now, who is taking care of that? Is that Veolia or is that going to be Wright Pierce?
I think that's going to be Wright Pierce, because I
Okay.
talked to Veolia, John, and he's strapped right now for time.
Okay, do me a favor, lean on Kevin tomorrow or Adam.
Okay, I will. Let's see.
Is that the generator that you were talking about?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
The boiler status. So I think the boiler right now, digestive boiler is completed, including the punch list. They finished that up today. However, unfortunately too, we're waiting for approval from the Mass State Plumbing and Gas Fitters Board to allow us to use methane gas. Now you might say, well, we've been using methane gas down there since 1961. Unfortunately, they won't give the approval. I mean, they won't let us run it. So the other day, I believe I called Chuck and I let him know, I think it's now about 2 days now. We were forced to, the state shut us down. We're not allowed to use methane. We're now using fuel oil, which this new digester has backup fuel oil.
Tell them how much a day.
The problem I have with this, and again, we're waiting for a state board. My argument is, again, like I said before, we've been doing this since 1961. My problem is right now we're using approximately 120 gallons per day at $4.20 a gallon. It's costing the town right now $500 a day in oil to run the new digester boiler, when in fact we could be running it with methane, which is the byproduct of the wastewater process, and is free. So I don't know. They said it could be up to 30 days. I know Wilkinson's working on it. We're trying to get it expedited, but I haven't heard a word, since that conversation we had on, I think it was Monday.
Okay, on the boiler, neither Rick was not part of that, neither was the board. So we would, that's one of the items, if you remember back, we were playing catch up with. I don't know how that backup boiler got worked into that. I don't think it was part of the original contract. The permitting I have a real problem with is because that should have all been anticipated up front. That's, to me, it's like asking Mrs. Lincoln how she liked to play. It's too late. We've already have about $12,000 in oil bills. I'm holding back a couple of payments to Wilkinson. I had them in at a meeting. We come to some kind of resolution on the excess fuel. I forwarded a copy of the contract. I forwarded a copy of the contract to Chris Kenny to tell him, what can I do? And he says, what's this? He never saw the contract. So he's looking into that to see if we have any wiggle room or things of that nature. The irony, if there is an irony to this, is that both parties are going to be bidding on the piping. So you can rest assured that if they're one of the winning bidders, there's going to be penalties in there. I'll never get burned like this again, but I don't know what conversations took place to cover this. I don't even know if there was an allocation for fuel when they agreed on the boiler, if there was any numbers discussing how much fuel to allocate or how much money would be available to cover that fuel.
Well, if I recall correctly, the discussions they had way back when, they talked about the weather and wanting to make sure that they got the work done during warm weather so they wouldn't have to pay for a heated trailer. So they should have been talking about oil back then too.
Absolutely,
I think
Robin.
Wilkinson for starting late, or Hallam with the project.
You're 100% right, Robin. And that was my real beef to him. And then he sat down and when we were meeting and Rick was there, and I really thought Rick was going to tackle me to keep me in my chair. He says, well, we're doing everything I can. And I very calmly and eloquently explained to him, what about the days when I happened to drive in to sign paperwork and I see guys standing around batting the breeze over their cars not working, or days they were saying they were going to be here and didn't show up for 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the things that just went up me the wrong way, but I don't know where we stand or what agreements were made, but Robin is 1,000% right. And it's right in the contract that the due date of this was September 2022. So we wouldn't have to pay for this. So it's going to be and like I think it was gentleman from Hallam said, well, I'm not eating this. And I said, well, it's not on my menu either. So that's where that stood out. So we said, right now, with the way it is with the state, I said, look, I says, going back and forth in emails is not going to solve anything. Let's get this goddamn thing up and running the way it should be. I said, start leaning on the state board. And this is another one, Rick, you're going to love this one when I tell you. Start leaning on the state board to get them in here to do this. And then he turned around and said to me, well, the guy we used retired. What does that got to do with what? I mean, we've been running methane since 1961. It's just, it's very ugly.
Yeah,
And Rick, I'm sorry you're in the middle of it because you were out of it.
right. And like they said, what he told me basically was, the rental was part of the initial contract, but he says we have never paid for oil. And again, we go back to if the project was done when it was supposed to be done,
Right.
the oil would have been minimal.
The oil would
Maybe
have been
nothing.
needed.
Yeah, it may not have been
Extremely
needed.
warm September and October. The
Yep.
project was completed complete September 22.
Right. So that's where we're at right now. Yeah, we beat that one.
I'm
So
sorry,
what-
Rick. You know how
No.
that.
Oh, I know. You trust me. I've been dealing with this a lot. Staffing, just bring the board up. I did hire a new employee, but after 2 weeks, I just didn't feel he was going to be a good fit at the facility, and I let him go.
You let him go?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Some things I didn't like. So anyways, just let the board know that a requisition has been immediately placed within Veolia, and we are hiring again. Anybody on this call or watches this call, again, I'm looking for what we call in the field is an O&M Tech 1. Right now, you don't even need a license. You have up to a year to get a license, a grade 3M, but I'm just looking for somebody who's looking to work hard, and learn from the ground up. And it's, the
Rick, can I
wastewater
ask you,
field.
does he have to be 18 or older?
Yes, yeah, you have to be 18 or over. The work right now, I just did a survey for the Mass DEP, and we're talking water, wastewater. Within 10 years, 1/3 of all operators will be retired, or at least eligible to retire. So I think the state's finally woken up and realized we got a problem, and this isn't just water operators too. So like I said, I just did a survey, and something's got to get done. I mean, we just don't have enough operators, and this is a perfect opportunity here in Rockland, the ground floor. Get your feet wet. We'll train you. Again, just looking for someone that's willing to work, and work hard with the current staff.
Well, that piggybacks on the labor report from Massachusetts. I don't know if any of you saw it.
Yeah,
That
I did.
there was well over 250,000 job openings in eastern Massachusetts alone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
250,000.
Yeah.
There was something brilliant I was going to say too on the staffing. Oh, okay. I'll wait till you're done. I know what I was going to say.
Yeah. So I mean, even this week, there was a New Year conference in Boston, just ended today, and I know Veolia was up there, full bore with their staffing, looking for operators. So again, if anyone's interested in working for our current opening, please go to veolia.com and search Rockland. And
Rick, is there any wiggle room we can? I know a lot of it's hazardous waste and hazardous material.
Mhm.
Any wiggle room we could get to get someone from VOTEC or something in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's anything, what I mean? Like I
Why
said,
don't you think of why don't you do this for me? Put together, because I have some contacts on a VOTEC. Put together a list of tasks, the minimal tasks that you'd have
we
this
have that. Yep.
person do to keep them away from chemicals as much as
Yep.
you can. And I'll give it to them, see what they could do. Maybe we get someone on a co-op.
Yeah, no, I'm open for anything.
Yep.
Last item we would talk about is those markouts. I didn't give the board a street by street, but I just want to give you an update. And like I said earlier, we're really busy at the facility. Just in January alone, and then we're through 25th today, we had 69 regular markouts and 4 emergencies. I mean, they're out of control. I mean, and we have to do them, and we trying to do them in-house, but a lot of times I just don't have the time, so I'm forced to do them on overtime. When some, typically it's Gary, but if anybody else, I always tell them, anyone else wants to do it, please jump in. I'll give you a list of them. And when we get these things, they're like 3 days later. And with I feel, and Chuck, the way I feel, it's like the plant is more important than these.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Emergencies are absolutely 100%. I mean, we jump on those immediately, no matter when they come in.
Okay, Rick, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Is that something that the board could hire someone to do markups?
Well, so with Robin talking about earlier, I'm hoping after this training on Friday, we're going to have the new iPads and the new training. My hope is that this is going to speed up the process, because like Robin said earlier, you get the call, you get the mark out, you got to go to the drawer, you got to make a copy. Sometimes they're not in. And so if we have this laptop, it should speed up the whole process of doing a markout, and that's really my hopes of this training on.
All right, let's give it another month to see how that works out.
Right, so
We need to hire a specific body to do that.
Yeah, it's just, and then they're all over the place, Chuck. I mean, there's some residents. I mean, utility poles are very common, and right now a bulk of them. I mean, Gary just did. I think right now, let me see, 14 different streets.
Well, who does them for water? Who does them for water?
What's that?
Who does them for water?
I don't know. I know there is a person on the water department who actually does those. But like I said, this month alone, 14 different streets. And right now, it seems like the gas company, they're doing they're all popping in. They're saying meter maintenance. So what that means is typically, I think it's like every 7 years, they go to your property, they replace the actual meter. But now from what I'm understanding is they're actually taking them out and like going back and making new connections. They're not just replacing the meter, you know, unscrew the fittings, put the new one in. They're going back and then they're actually, you know, have to make, so that's why they want the sewer and the water to, you know, to go out and mark out their, you know, our utilities.
Well, let me ask you this, Rick.
I mean,
Would it
whole
be
streets.
worthwhile to have a conversation with water department to say, can we split a person, hire a person full-time to split
Yeah.
with water?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Robin could find out who does them for them. I don't know if it's one designated person. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's busy. We're busy.
Robin, could you make that call for us if you don't mind?
You want me to find out how they do their markouts?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
how they handle their markouts.
Yeah, call
Is it
Crystal.
one person? Is it multiple people? I mean, do they have somebody sitting by? I mean, I know how the water works with, you know, within Veolia, and they work just as hard as we do in the wastewater field. You know, and I hardly doubt there's somebody sitting by the phone waiting for a markout.
Well, I know that water, before we were signed up directly with DigSafe, water used to cull through. They were on DigSafe, they would cull through and just forward the ones to sewer that pertain to sewer. I don't know if you're doing that, if you're applying any criteria, or if you're just marking out every one. There might be some that don't need to be marked out. I don't know what that criteria is.
Yeah, I don't either. I know, like I said, they just come to me, you know. through
Well, let's have Robin, if you would, find out how they handle their markouts. And then skip back to Rick, and then maybe Robin's got a point there. Maybe they don't do everything. Maybe we are. Let's just find out what they're doing, what we're doing.
Like I said, the biggest thing
Maybe
is
it
they
means
just take,
splitting a body,
right, they just take a lot of time, a
or
lot of
maybe
time.
one body full-time between two people.
Does anyone have a concern about liability? Like maybe water doesn't want to mark out sewer because they'd be taking on a liability if they made a mistake, and vice versa?
Don't know. I think they must have to do there's water markouts, so they must do them.
Right, but water is located in a different spot than sewer.
Right.
Would they be taking on a liability if they started to do the sewer markouts where they're
Well,
not?
I don't know. I'm not saying that. All I want to do is find out how do they handle
Right.
it.
No, I know you're not saying that. I'm just throwing that out as a
Yeah,
concern.
no, it may be. I mean, to me,
That's something to
you know what?
consider. That's
I wouldn't
yeah,
want to
that's
do it.
something to consider if we're talking about sharing a person.
Yeah, we could do a joint liability or whatever. Let's
Yeah.
see where it goes.
Yeah, so that's about all I have.
Are there any other questions you want me to ask when I have them on the phone?
No, that's just it. How they handle knockouts. I mean, really, that's all I'd like to find out. So, and if they're seeing the same amount we are, like you just heard, Rick said we got 69 in January. All right. So if we have 69, they must have 69.
All right.
That it, Rick?
That's all I have, Chuck.
They're
One
not
thing-
the only department that has markouts too, because highway is doing them for drainage.
Yep.
We have drainage markouts. Are there any other types of markouts for utilities under the street?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, and electric.
But the-
Horizon.
yeah,
Cable.
that's not at one of our utilities though.
No,
No.
I'm just saying those are the
No.
ones I could think of.
I think water's probably the closest.
That'd be the closest
Was.
to similar to ours. But even highway, how do they handle theirs? With that,
Both highway and water have crews.
with that, did anybody
Thanks, Rob.
see tonight's Patriot Ledger?
I did.
The front page of the Patriot Ledger is the EPA and the lawsuit with Quincy on INI and things of that nature. Interesting read, very interesting read. They got hit with a fine, I think $115,000. Now, I know we've already told we are going to be fined. How much? I don't think it's going to be in that ballpark anywhere near that.
What's the basis for our fine?
Pardon me?
What would be the basis for the town of Rockland getting fined?
Oh, we're getting fined for they've already told us that we're getting fined for EPA violations of flow, repeated
That's
violations.
fine.
So the flow violations, which we have no control over, because well, we do if we clean out the I&I. That,
Right.
is that where they're going with it? Okay.
But it was a good article. It's on page 1 or 2. If you're interested. Dan, Sherry, what I would like is if you could, I have capital plan, superintendent for working sessions
Mhm.
and the ordinance for the next one to get out of the way for the town meeting.
Mhm.
And we'll see if Dave will be ready. Dave will want to do capital management on the 31st. Anybody else have anything else?
For our session, can we talk about the I&I development fee?
Excuse me?
I&I fees for developments?
I will be more than happy to talk about that once we get town meeting out of the way, the ordinance, the capital plan, and all that. I mean, to
You
me, we're
mean-
just building up these
Can you-
working sessions. I want to get to the fees desperately, but let's get the immediate needs out of the way first and then hit that. Right now, we have no one lining up to connect.
Well, I would suggest the needs immediate before they start lining up.
Well, I would like to, but let's get the capital.
Can you
plan.
put it on there? And if we have time, we'll get to it. And if we don't have time, we can move it to the next one.
I'll add it.
Okay.
I have a lot of background data on that I could give you, Sherry, which might make the process quicker for you guys when you do discuss it.
Okay. Send it to me, Robin.
The only thing, and I'm gonna be a little selfish, I mean, I don't mind the working sessions, but I mean, you gotta remember, we have been at this every single week since really August, and sometimes twice a week. And things just, and I don't mind. It's getting old. Okay, do we say a prayer or anything now, or? Robin's
No.
sanity and. Oh, Robin said she was gonna supply eggplant for the next meeting, by the way, which, thank you, Robin. Hey, she brought it up yesterday and I ended up talking my wife into getting some, so it's a win-win. All right, with that, I'll take a motion tomorrow night. Dan, Sherry, optional.
I'll be there.
Oh, I do need one of you. It's an open public meeting.
No, I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll
But
be there.
if you want to bow
Zoom,
out
right?
early, once the meeting's open, that's fine. Rick,
Still Zoom.
Robin, you can have the night off if you want.
It's on Zoom?
If you want to attend as a resident or what have you, feel free. I expect the presentation to be about 30 minutes long anyway. Maybe more, because it led into some real good discussion. And when you're talking about discharging treated sewer groundwater, I mean, I've got a ton of questions I want to ask in front of the people that I'm trying to stimulate more questions. So,
Chuck, can you confirm that's Zoom meeting?
yes, it is on Zoom,
Yes.
7 o'clock on Zoom.
Great.
Adam Higgins will be doing the presentation. Kevin Olson has to fly to California for a funeral, so he won't be there. But Adam put on a good show yesterday, good dog and pony show. But I think the residents really need to see this so they fully understand why their rates are gonna climb. So with that said, I'll take a motion and end the meeting.
I make the motion.
I will take a second.
I will second that motion.
All in favor, Mr. Duras,
Yes.
Ms. Valley,
Yes.
Mr. Hessian is a yes, that is unanimous. Robin, if you got the time tomorrow to sit down with me around 10:30?
We have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's Friday.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you want to sit together at 10:30?
Yeah, sometime 10:30, 11 o'clock, just to make sure I have all my applicants and all that squared away and who's coming in when,
Applicants for what?
connections.
Oh my God, we have to revisit that? That's just ugly. Ugh,
What?
that's just ugly, that whole trying to keep track of all that.
I know that. That's why I just want to sit down and make sure that I'm as an ugly situation as you. Just so I can make some heads or tails. If we have to have special meetings to clear that up, we will.
Okay,
So I owe Robin tomorrow copies of the emails on the INI year one. Robin, did you get the disclosure for Sherry's thing?
I did.
Is that called the disclosure?
What?
I think so.
All right.
It is.
Other than that, hey, Rick, you can go back to bed.
All right, thanks. Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good night.
Good
night.
night.